Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hey Shabshidanta Hoy Amrera Palava Bhakta Gana Kokilera Saravada Balaba. All these conclusions are like the newly grown twigs of a mango tree. They are always pleasing to the devotees, who in this way resemble cuckoo birds. Apakta ushtrera ite nahoi pravesh tabe chittai hoy mora anana vishesh. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The camel-like non-devotees cannot enter into these topics. Therefore, there is special jubilation in my heart. Je lage kahite bhaya, she jadi na jane. Iha vai kiba shuk ache tribhuvane. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. For fear of them, I do not wish to speak. But if they do not understand, then what can be happier in all the three worlds? Ataiva Bhaktagnane Kari Namaskar Ishanke Kayatar Hauk Chamatkar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Therefore, after offering obeisances to the devotees, for their satisfaction, I shall speak without hesitating. Can't get any bhav without that flute. Krishna Ravichar Ak Acharye Antare Purnananda Purnaras Rupa Kahe More. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Once Lord Krishna considered within his heart, everyone says that I am complete bliss, full of all rasas. Ama hoite anandita hoy tribhuvana. Ama ke ananda dibe ashe kon jano. All the world derives pleasure from me. Is there anyone who can give me pleasure? Ama hoite jar hoy shata gun. She jano ahladite pare morman. One who has 100 times more qualities than me could give pleasure to my mind. Ama hoite guni bhado, jagate asambhav, ekale radhate taha kari anubhav. One more qualified than me is impossible to find in the world. But in the Radha alone, I feel the presence of one who can give me pleasure. Koti kama jini rupa jajapi amar asa murva madhurya shamya nahijar. Mor rupe apatyayita hoy tribhuvana radhara darshana mora judhai nayana. Although my beauty defeats the beauty of 10 million cupids, although it is unequaled and unsurpassed, and although it gives pleasure to the three worlds, seeing Radharani gives pleasure to my eyes. Mor bamshi gite Akarashaye tribhuvana. Radhara vachani hare. Amara shravana. The vibration of my transcendental flute attracts the three worlds, but my ears are enchanted by the sweet words of Srimati Radharani. Jajapi amar gande, jagat sugandha. Mora chitta pran hare, radha anga gandha. Radha anga gandha. Although my body lends fragrance to the entire creation, the scent of Radharani's limbs captivates my mind and heart. Jajapi amara she jagat saras. Radhara adhara rasa ama karebash. Although the entire creation is full of different tastes because of me, I am charmed by the nectarian taste of the lips of Srimati Radharani. Jajapi amara sparsha kotindu shitala. Ratikara sparshe ama kare shushitala. And although my touch is cooler than 10 million moons, I am refreshed by the touch of Srimati Radhika. E mata jagatera shuke ami hetu. Radhikara rupa guna amar jivatu. Thus, although I am the source of happiness for the entire world, the beauty and attributes of Sri Radhika are my life and soul. E mato anubhav amar pratita vichari dakeya jadi shab viparita. In this way, my affectionate feelings for Srimati Radharani may be understood, but on analysis, I find them contradictory. Radhara darshane mor, jutai nayana. Amar darshane radha shuke ageyana. My eyes are fully satisfied when I look upon Srimati Radharani, but by looking upon me, she becomes even more advanced in satisfaction. Paraspara benu gite hare chetana, bora brahme kamalere kare alingana. The flute-like murmur of the bamboos rubbing against one another steals Radharani's consciousness, for she thinks it to be the sound of my flute, and she embraces a tumultree, mistaking it for me. Krishna lingana payu, janama sapale, Krishna sukhe, magna rahe, vrikka karikole. I have gotten the embrace of Sri Krishna, she thinks. Now my life is fulfilled. Thus she remains immersed in pleasing Krishna, taking the tree in her arms. Anakul bate jade pai morganda, udiya padite chahe, preme hoy anda. When a favorable breeze carries to her the fragrance of my body, she is blinded by love and tries to fly into that breeze. Tambula charvita jabe kare asfadane, ananda samudre dube, kichui na jane. When she tastes the beetle chewed by meat, she merges in an ocean of joy and forgets everything else. Amara sangame radha pai je ananda, shatta mukhe bode, tabu na pai tar anta. Even with hundreds of mouths, I could not express the transcendental pleasure she derives from my association. Lila ante shuka ihar angara madhuri, tahad heki shuke ame apana pashari. Seeing the luster of her complexion after our pastime together, I forget my own identity and happiness. Dohara je samaras Bharata Muni mane Amara Vrajera Rashi Seha nahi jane. Sage Bharat has said that the mellows of lover and beloved are equal, but he does not know the mellows of my Vrindavan. Purport. According to expert sexologists like Bharata Muni, the male and female enjoy equally in material sexual pleasure. But in the spiritual world, the relationships are different, although this is unknown to mundane experts. Anyara sangame ame jata sukhapai, taha hoite rada sukha shata adhikai. The happiness I feel when meeting Radharani is 100 times greater than the happiness I get from meeting others. Nirdu tata mrita madhuri parimala kalyana bimbadaru Vaktram pankaja saurabham kurarita shlaghavidas tegira Angam chandana shitalam tanuryam saudarya sarvasya vak Tvam asaja Mamedam Indriya Kulam Radhe Buhur Modate. My dear auspicious Radharani, your body is the source of all beauty. Your red lips are softer than the sense of immortal sweetness. Your face bears the aroma of a lotus flower. Your sweet words defeat the vibrations of the cuckoo. And your limbs are cooler than the pulp of sandalwood. All my transcendental senses are overwhelmed in ecstatic pleasure by tasting you, who are completely decorated by beautiful qualities. This verse spoken by Lord Krishna to Radha is recorded in the Lalita Madhava of Srila Rupa Goswami. Rupe Kamsa Harasya Lubdanayanam Sparshe Tishritya Tavacham Vanyam Utkalita Shutim Parimale Sambrishta Nasaputam Arajam Rasanam Kalidara Pute Nyansham Mukambo Ruham Gambo Girna Mahadritim Bahirapi Projad Vikara Kulam. Her eyes are enchanted by the beauty of Lord Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa. Her body thrills in pleasure at his touch. Her ears are always attracted to his sweet voice. Her nostrils are enchanted by his fragrance, and her tongue hankers for the nectar of his soft lips. She hangs down her lotus face, exercising self-control only by pretense, but she cannot help showing the external signs of her spontaneous love for Lord Krishna. Thus, Srila Rupa Goswami describes the countenance of Radharani. Tate jane mote ache kuna ekaras Amara mohini raha tare kare bash Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Considering this, I can understand that some unknown mellow in me controls the entire existence of my captivator, Srimati Radharani. Ama hoite radha pai jai jati asuk taha asvadite ami sadai unmuk Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Hare Hare. I am always eager to taste the joy that Radharani derives from me. Nana Jatakari Aminare Asvadite Sheshuka Madhurya Grane Loba Bade Chite Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In spite of various efforts, I've not been able to taste it, but my desire to relish that pleasure increases as I smell its sweetness. Rasa Swadite Ame Koila Avatar Frame Ras Asvadila Vivida Prakar Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Formerly I appeared in the world to taste mellows, and I tasted the mellows of pure love in various ways. Raga Marge Bhakta Bhakti Kare Jai Prakare Kahashi Koila Lila Acharana Dware Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. I taught devotional service that springs from the devotee's spontaneous love by demonstrating it with my pastimes. 18 Krishna more Nahila Puran Vijatila Bhave Naheta Asvadan Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. But these three desires of mine were not satisfied, for one cannot enjoy them in a contrary position. Radhikara Baba Kanti Angikara Bine Shetin Shuk Kabu Nahe Asvadane Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Unless I accept the luster of the ecstatic love of Sri Radhika, these three desires cannot be fulfilled. Radha Bhavangi Kari Dari Thar Barna Teen Shuk Asvadite Hab Avitirna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Therefore, assuming Radharani's sentiments and bodily complexion, I shall descend to fulfill these three desires. Sarva Bhave Kaila Krishna Eta Nishchai Hain Kali Aila Yugavatara Samai Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Get ready for the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. Here it comes. In this way, Lord Krishna came to a decision. Simultaneously, the time came for the incarnation of the age. Shei Kali Shiyadvait Karina Aradhan Tahar Hunkar Koila Krishna Aksharan Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, That was a Karshana, not Aksharan, a Karshana, attraction. At that time, Sri Advaita was earnestly worshipping him. Advaita attracted him with his loud calls. Pitta Mata Guru Gan Age Avatari Radhikara Bhava Varna Angikara Kari Navadite Shachi Garba Shuddha Dukta Sindhu Tahata Prakata Hoila Krishna Pura Indu Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. First Lord Krishna made his parents and elders appear. Then Krishna himself, with the sentiments and complexion of Radhika, appeared in Navadip, like the full moon from the womb of Mother Shachi, which is like an ocean of pure milk. Takari lun shashta kela vyakyan Shirupa goser pada padma kari dhyan Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Meditating on the lotus feet of Sri Rupa Goswami, I have thus explained the sixth verse. dua shloka ramaya Jai Kaila Heart Shri Rupa Gosayara Shloka Praman Samart Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. I can support the explanation of these two verses, verses 5 and 6 of the first chapter, with a verse by Shri Rupa Goswami. Param kasyapa pranayi jana vrindasya kutiki rasa stomam vitva maduram upabdum kam apiya rucham swam avavre dutim iha tariyam prakatayan sadeva chaitanya kritir atitaram na kripayatu. Lord Krishna desired to taste the limitless nectarian mellows of the love possessed by one of his multitude of loving damsels, Sri Radha, and so he has assumed the form of Lord Chaitanya. He has tasted that love while hiding his own dark complexion with her effulgent yellow color. May that Lord Chaitanya confer upon us his grace. This is the third verse of the second Chaitanyashtaka of Srila Rupa Goswami's Stavamala. Mangalar Charananam Krishna Chaitanya Lakshanam Prayojanam Chavatare Shloka Shakar Narupitam. Thus, the auspicious invocation, the essential nature of the truth of Lord Chaitanya, and the need for his appearance have been set forth in 6 verses. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Parijar Ash Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Das Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Shri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 4th chapter, describing the confidential reasons for the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Now please put up from the Bhagavad Gita. Yayata mam prapadyante tam stutaiva bhujamyaham mama vartmana vartanta iti matva nasajite. Yayatamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham mama vartmana vartante manusha partha sarvasha. Everybody. Jayatamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manusha partha sarvashaha. Yea. Please repeat. All who yata as mam unto me prapadyante surrender tan them tata so eva certainly bhajami reward aham I mama my vartma path anuvartante follow manusha all men partha osanaprata sarvashaha in all respects. Translation: as they surrender to me, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Purport. Everyone is searching for Krishna in the different aspects of his manifestations. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is partially realized in his impersonal Brahmajyotir effulgence and as the all-pervading Supersoul dwelling within everything, including the particles of atoms. But Krishna is fully realized only by his pure devotees. Consequently, Krishna is the object of everyone's realization, and thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have him. In the transcendental world also, Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees in the transcendental attitude, just as the devotee wants him. One devotee may want Krishna as Supreme Master, another as his personal friend, another as his son, and still another as his lover. Krishna rewards all the devotees equally according to their different intensities of love for him. In the material world, the same reciprocations of feelings are there, and they are equally exchanged by the Lord with the different types of worshippers. The pure devotees, both here and in the transcendental abode, associate with him in person and are able to render personal service to the Lord and thus derive transcendental bliss in his loving service. As for those who are impersonalists and who want to commit spiritual suicide by annihilating the individual existence of the living entity, Krishna helps also by absorbing them in his effulgence. Such impersonalists do not agree to accept the eternal, blissful personality of Godhead. Consequently, they cannot relish the bliss of transcendental personal service to the Lord, having extinguished their individuality. Some of them who are not firmly situated, even in the impersonal existence, return to this material field to exhibit their dormant desires for activities. They are not admitted to the spiritual planets, but they are again given a chance to act on the material planets. For those who are fruitive workers, the Lord awards the desires. The Lord awards the desired results of their prescribed duties as the Yageshvara, and those who are yogis seeking mystic powers are awarded such powers. In other words, everyone is dependent for success upon his mercy alone, and all kinds of spiritual processes are but different degrees of success on the same path. Unless therefore one comes to the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, all attempts remain imperfect, as is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udarati tivrina bhakti yogena yadeta purusham param. Everyone. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udarati tivrina bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is without desire, the condition of the devotees, or is desirous of all fruitive results, or is after liberation, one should with all efforts try to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead for complete perfection, culminating in Krishna consciousness. Now please go to 2.3.10 of the Bhagavatam. Kama sarva kamo va. All together. Moksha kama udarati tivrina bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Akamaha. One who has transcended all material desires. Sarvakama. One who has the sum total of all material desires. Va. Either.
Mokshakam.
Mokshakama. One who desires liberation.
One who desires liberation.
Udarati.
Udarati.
With broader intelligence.
With broader intelligence.
Tivrena.
Tivrena.
With great force.
With great force.
Bhakti Yogena.
Bhakti Yogena.
By devotional service to the Lord.
By devotional service to
Yajeta.
Yajeta.
Should worship.
Should worship.
Purusham.
Purusham.
The Lord.
The Lord.
Param.
Param.
The Supreme Whole. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Purushottama, or the Supreme Personality. It is he only who can award liberation to the impersonalists by absorbing such aspirants in the Brahmajyoti, the bodily rays of the Lord. The Brahmajyoti is not separate from the Lord, as the glowing sun ray is not independent of the sun disk. Therefore, one who desires to merge into the supreme impersonal Brahmajyoti must also worship the Lord by Bhakti Yoga, as recommended here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti Yoga is especially stressed here as the means of all perfection. In the previous chapters, it has been stated that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And in the same way in this chapter, it is emphatically declared that the Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of the different varieties of worship of the different demigods. Bhakti Yoga, thus being the supreme means of self-realization, is recommended here. Everyone must therefore seriously take up the methods of Bhakti Yoga, even though one aspires for material enjoyment or liberation from material bondage. A kama is one who has no material desire, a living being naturally being the part and parcel of the Supreme Whole, Purusham Purnam, has as his natural function to serve the Supreme Being, just as the parts and parcels of the body or the limbs of the body are naturally meant to serve the complete body. Desireless means, therefore, not to be inert like the stone, but to be conscious of one's actual position and thus desire satisfaction only from the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this desirelessness as Bhajaniya Parama Purusha Sukha Matrasva Sukhatvam in his Sandarbha. This means that one should feel happy only by experiencing the happiness of the Supreme Lord. This intuition of the living being is sometimes manifested even during the conditioned stage of a living being in the material world, and such intuition is expressed in the manner of altruism, philanthropy, socialism, communism, etc., by the undeveloped minds of less intelligent persons. In the mundane field, such an outlook of doing good to others in the form of society, community, family, country, or humanity is a partial manifestation of the same original feeling in which a living entity feels happiness by the happiness of the Supreme Lord. Such superb feelings were exhibited by the damsels of Brajabhumi for the happiness of the Lord. The gopis love the Lord without any return, and this is the perfect exhibition of the Kama spirit. Kama spirit, or the desire for one's own satisfaction, is fully exhibited in the material world, whereas the spirit of Kama is fully exhibited in the spiritual world. Thoughts of becoming one with the Lord or merged in the Brahmajyoti can be exhibitions of Kama spirit if they are desires for one's own satisfaction to be free from the material miseries. A pure devotee does not want liberation so that he may be relieved from the miseries of life. Even without so-called liberation, a pure devotee is aspirant for the satisfaction of the Lord. Influenced by the Kama spirit, Arjuna declined to fight in the Kurukshetra battlefield because he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. But being a pure devotee, he agreed to fight on the instruction of the Lord as he came to his senses and realized that satisfaction of the Lord at the cost of his own satisfaction was his prime duty. Thus, he became a Kama. That is the perfect stage of a perfect living being. Udarati means one who has a broader outlook. People with desires for material enjoyment worship small demigods, and such intelligence is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita 7.20 as Hritta-jnana, the intelligence of one who has lost his senses. One cannot obtain any result from demigods without getting sanction from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a person with a broader outlook can see that the ultimate authority is the Lord, even for material benefits. Under the circumstances, one with a broader outlook, even with the desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, should take to the worship of the Lord directly. And anyone, whether in Akama or Sakama or Mokshakama, should worship the Lord with great expedience. This implies that Bhakti Yoga may be perfectly administered without any mixture of karma and jnana, as the unmixed sun ray is very forceful and is therefore called tivra. Similarly, unmixed Bhakti Yoga of hearing, chanting, etc. may be performed by one and all, regardless of inner motive. Akama sarva kamo va mokshkama udarati ivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Everybody. Akama sarva kamo va mokshkama udarati tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jnana Tasamai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Okay, I'm looking on the board. There's no questions or reflections. It's wide open. It just says Om Tat Sat. Questions for today's class will follow. So some striking points from these verses. One second. One is Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Surida Nishchoy Krishne Bhakti Koila Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Shraddha, faith, firm faith, is rooted in the understanding that this Tivrina Bhakti Yogina, in unmixed, direct process of devotional service, which here in the context is being described. The mixture means without any other process, karma, jnana. That means Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedam. These are the Navalakshana. The qualities of direct devotional service through which one connects directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so nothing else is needed. And in the heart of one who is tasting the connection of Krishna through these processes, and also because of that, seeing Krishna's hand in his or her life, such a person becomes more dedicated to the process of devotional service and feels exclusively devoted to not only Krishna, but to the process of Navalakshana Bhakti. No need for any other embellishments or special practices in order to attain whatever one is after. In fact, kama sarva kamava, it's astounding, isn't it, that if one has all material desires, one should still take the process of direct devotional service, unmixed with any other process. You don't have to worship a demigod. You don't have to make any special arrangements other than hearing about Krishna. Do you find that to be a relief? There's a need, actually, to fix the mind. As the mind's restless in trying to understand, where can I actually find peace? And Prabhupada says, for lack of an ultimate goal in life, people feel unhappy. And again, the Bhagavatam helps us in that way as humans. We may be pulled in various directions towards various suggested goals. However, the Bhagavatam tells us definitively that don't divert your mind. Stay engaged. Tasmad ekena manasa bhagavan sattvatam bhati shrotavya kirtitavyascha dhyayam puja nityada. Srimad Bhagavatam Sutta Goswami says, therefore, when he's describing how to come to the perfection of life, the perfection of the varnashrama dharma, everything achieved. Tasmad, therefore, ekena manasa, fix your mind in one place. Bhagavan Sattvatambhati, on Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the protector of his devotees, the maintainer of his devotees, Pati. Shrotavya kirtitavyascha dhyeya pujascha nityada. There's your list. You can make it and then say, okay, Bhagavatam has suggested I stick to these. What are they? Hearing, chanting, remembering, worshiping, etc. The 9 processes of devotional service. And when engaged in those processes sufficiently, then we'll feel a steadiness of heart. That is, we'll know for certain that we're making progress in life. The anxiety that I'm diverting my attention to many different inferior goals will dissipate, because everything is attained by Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, the intensified and focused practice of the direct 9 methods of devotional service. So one may then make a plan to hear and chant about Krishna by reading, hearing, organizing a class, arranging to be at a certain place where a class takes place, because there's 3 kinds of people that become benefited by Krishna Katha. We hear this in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Three kinds of people become benefited by Krishna Katha. One is the speaker. So if you're speaking it, you'll get benefit. The other is the one who's inquiring and listening. And the third is everybody else who comes in contact with the vibration. In fact, every atmosphere that we find ourselves in, otherwise known as a realm is an interesting word. It's an area. If you could look it up, please, somebody, and let me know the exact definition. But a realm, for instance, Om Bhurabhava Swa, describing different realms in the universe. Om Bhurabhava Swa. We're going to various layers of the universe, wherein there's various layers of consciousness. These layers are these levels of consciousness are brought about by the particular sound vibration that you find there. So everyone who wants to create an atmosphere develops a soundscape. It's well known that when you go in the supermarket, there's music playing, da 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 da, and in nowadays in retail shops, they have researched what kind of music to play in each circumstance in order to stimulate the mind of the buyer that, yes, let me buy something. And to stimulate the mind and heart for bhakti, one must develop a soundscape in one's own life by which one becomes enlivened for tivrena bhakti yogena. The mind has a tendency to revert to material sound vibration because it's accustomed to it. So the practice of bhakti, tivrena bhakti yogena, means to be very strict in developing a process through which one stays in contact with the spiritual sound vibration in all circumstances. And then the realm is defined. You can understand the realm, or the realm is defined by the sound vibration, and by being in that particular realm with a particular sound vibration, our consciousness will be developed or devolved because of our contact with that sound. And Ajay Nitai, Prabhu says, how do we follow the footsteps of Arjuna in full surrender to Krishna, being unmotivated and unalloyed? Well, Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 8th chapter, that even as you're doing your work, because Arjuna's work was to fight, you should remember me. So you keep that in mind. In the purport, Prabhupada says that people have to work. And therefore, how do they go about having full surrender to Krishna and being directly involved in devotional service? And he says, does Krishna, that, it's Srila Prabhupada in his purport, as you're doing your work in the world, go on chanting Hare Krishna. So don't give that up. And by the chanting and going on with whatever obligatory work you have, step by step, the heart will become purified and the desire for unalloyed devotional service will arise in the heart. It's a gradual process through which we come to unalloyed devotional service. We'll have opportunities in our life by which we're faced with danger, with obstacles. And if we go on chanting Hare Krishna during those times, or even if we don't, somehow we're pushed off our practice and we realize the result of, here's what's happened when I stopped my practice. It didn't help. It didn't help me at all to just stop chanting. And so then I might take it back up again and say, okay, this doesn't work. As we go along in our lives, we learn what works and also what doesn't work. Vidyam cha yas tadvedo bayam saha avidyayam ratum tirtva vidyayam ratum ashnute. Side by side nations and transcendental knowledge is fortifying. So the answer is continue chanting. And gradually, by the power of the holy name, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the consciousness becomes cleansed. Alex and Valentina Haribo, they asked this question, why is it so that Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj feeling joy and happiness that non-devotees will not understand what he is speaking about? Because we also want to understand it and also to call everyone to understand it. It's an expression of ecstasy that he has. First of all, if you remember the context of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Kaviraj Goswami was with his brother, and his brother had this misunderstanding that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should be worshipped, but not Lord Nityananda. And he had an argument with his brother. And that night, when he was sleeping, Kaviraj Goswami was visited by Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who was very pleased with him for standing up for the proper philosophy. And that is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda are Krishna and Balaram, they're worshipped together. You can't separate one from the other. This is half-hand logic. I like one end that's giving eggs, but the other side I have to feed, so I'll cut it in half. So this visitation included Nityananda Prabhu being very pleased with Kaviraj Goswami and telling him, go to Vrindavan, for there you will attain all things. He gave him a benediction. So Kaviraj Goswami then immediately got up in the middle of the night when he had the dream, and he departed for Vrindavan and went and took shelter there. You can see his place of residence there at Radhakunda. You can visit it. It's a very holy place. There's a very serious pujari that takes care of that place. And Kaviraj Goswami, even in his old age, he was writing these, and he was in an atmosphere that was surcharged with controversy. That is, there were various parts of the sampradaya that were being worked out, and there were those who were misunderstanding the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda. So it's not that he doesn't want everyone to know about Krishna and take advantage of devotional service, but for those who are determined to misunderstand it and to create controversy to distract others, or for those who are grossly foolish and therefore cannot approach the subject matter properly, but try to do so anyway, he's relishing the fact that they won't be able to enter in here. Leave it, especially this high of philosophy, leave it to those who are dedicated to the process of pure devotional service. They're not qualified to enter into that sangha. Next one from Naveen. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Krishna is in everyone's heart as Paramatma, who is non-different from Krishna himself. Later in Bhagavad Gita, it is also said realization comes in different forms, in which first is by concentrating, focusing on Paramatma, the impersonal form, and finally the Supreme Soul himself. However, focusing on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna is said to be the ultimate goal, aim focusing on Paramatma. For me, this sounds contradicting as Paramatma is non-different from Krishna himself. Well, he's different and not different at the same time. There's a way in which we understand in our philosophy the various forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to their qualities. So the quality of Paramatma is different. The qualities of Paramatma are different from those of Krishna. Well, not that they're different, but Krishna has more qualities. Rupa Goswami points this out. Narayan has 60 qualities altogether, whereas Krishna has 64 qualities, which are very important qualities. The sweetness of the devotees that he's surrounded with in Vrindavan, the beautiful playing of his flute, his childhood pastimes, and the sweetness of his form. And these are 4 superlative qualities that put him above even Narayan. And so in our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, we're appreciating that yes, Krishna is one. Departure eva hita shantanama bhupeta dipayate varvata hetu samana dharma. Yes, tadrageva hicha vishnu chaya vibhati govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. There are many expansions, unlimited, but there's one original from whom everything expands, and all the different forms of Godhead expand. However, Krishna is still the original, and he has more qualities than any of the expansions. And we find that Balaram is his first expansion, but Krishna is distinguished as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his relationship with Balaram in the Vraj Leela, after Brahma had stolen the cows and cowherd boys. Krishna had remanifested them in their identical forms, but they were the Vishnu expansions. There were some interesting goings-on in Vrindavan at that time. For instance, the mothers of the children and the mothers and fathers of their children, who are now replicas, they didn't know that, but they became more affectionate, many more times affectionate towards their children. If you can imagine that, mothers being 10 times more affectionate for your child than you are now. And Balaram was noticing this, and then he saw how even the cows who've been weaned off, the calves had been weaned off their milk. They had been put in different pastures, but the cows came running to meet their offspring. It was certainly an odd occurrence, and Balaram was wondering, what is going on here? And then the Bhagavatam reveals how Krishna then revealed to Balaram what was happening by removing the power of his internal potency by layers. At first, Balaram thought maybe some Rakshasi Maya has covered Vrindavan. He thought that's not possible. And step by step, he came to the realization, oh, it's Krishna doing all this, and these are expansions of Krishna. And then he was in on it. So the point is that even Balaram, the first expansion of Krishna, is not equal to Krishna. Krishna is still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Supreme Lord is one, but he expands himself into various forms, and each one of them has various qualities, but Krishna has the most qualities and the sweetest qualities of all. So Krishna and the Paramatma are one, but Krishna has more qualities. Mayank, question, can you please explain what is either in Bhagavad Gita 7:4, earth, water? Ether. Ether means it's a subtle element which we call space. Space gives definition to all things. As an example, if you have ever had the experience that your space key on your keyboard sticks, I once tried to clean my keyboard. Big mistake. I mean, it said use this, I think it was denatured alcohol or something like that. I was trying to clean it. somehow some got into the keys. And for the next 6 hours, much to my dismay, there were no spaces between the I's and the O's and the P's, K's and the J's. It didn't matter what word I wrote. I could write long sentences. I could not understand what I had written because the space key didn't work. So it's a very subtle element that gives definition to all the various objects in this world. Without space, of course, those of you who live in the same house with another person, you've heard him or her say, "I need my space." Hey, give me a little space here. I'm cooking right now. We need space. Space is an element called ether, and it helps to give definition to the things so it's not all just merged into one. All the elements have their separate existences. Ether. Manjula Kanda, lots of questions today. Thank you. When we are in trouble, health-wise, monetarily, emotionally, I have to expand the window, please. Excuse me. There. Even though we are doing our sadhana and know that Krishna is the original giver and he should be approached, there's a natural need to keep looking for answers. And we try different methods to alleviate our misery. For example, through astrology, through traditional religious yagyas. I think at times, well, Krishna has to help us through something or someone, so maybe this is how he is helping. But I'm not sure if that is the right thinking. Could you clarify? How do we approach such problems as we desperately need to resolve? Could you please give me the verse from the 7th canto, 9th chapter? Balasya neha sharanam. Pretty Kishori knows this one. Balasya neha sharanam pitarhonda shinga nartasya chaganamudanvati majatono. Taptasya tat pratividir yarihanjisheshtas tavad vibo tanubutam twarupekshitanam. In this verse, Prahlad says that no matter what we do, it doesn't work unless the Lord sanctions it. So he gives 3 examples. He says, so a boat on water can't save a drowning man. Medicine can't save a patient. Doctor says, here, take this medicine. Do you guarantee it'll work? 95%, I guarantee. Well, what about the other 5%? That I cannot tell you. And then parents, they do the best they can to protect their children, but can they always? No. In all different ways, there are risks in this world. Even when taking Ayurvedic medicine, the Ayurvedic doctor will tell you, before you take the medicine, you say a prayer to Vishnu. Please let this medicine be effective. Because if Vishnu doesn't want it to work, doesn't matter how much you paid for it, doesn't matter how much gold is in that little pasty substance they sold you, it's not going to have its effect. If Krishna is upekshitanam, if he doesn't sanction it, it doesn't work. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, however, we will take whatever measures we can reasonably to protect our children, obviously. We will do what we can. For instance, you put on a safety belt. Nirakula and I were walking yesterday and we saw a little girl. She was riding a tricycle and she had a helmet on. And I was thinking, God, when I was a kid, I'm not advocating for not wearing helmets, believe me. But when we were kids, we didn't wear helmets for anything. And then, of course, people didn't even wear helmets to ride motorcycles back then. And, of course, a lot of people died of head injuries, too. And then Nirkula said, yeah, but we didn't even have safety belts. I remember when that law came in, and it was about as heated as things get nowadays about various regulations. Do this, don't do that, safety belts. And can a safety belt, are you guaranteed that a safety belt will save you from a crash? No. Lots of people die even with a safety belt. But there are statistics that show that it makes you a lot safer. So there you put on your safety belt, because if there's a chance that it'll help, then why flaunt it? Why tempt destiny? Do your part whatever you can, without leaving the shelter of Krishna. Do what you can in order to get through life, be inventive, and do whatever things. But understand, just as when you're taking Ayurvedic medicine, it's not going to work unless Krishna sanctions it. That will lead more and more to this feeling of, let me take more shelter of Krishna. One night, one very hot, sweltering night during Kartik, after I finished at our vrat at Govardhan, I was, hey, it's Trinavarta. Take cover. I was sitting in Sriji's Jewelers, downtown, otherwise known as Lowy Bazaar. Lowy Bazaar. Lots of strum and drung, lots of noise, and people coming to and fro. And I was in there to get some little things for my deities. They have all kinds of little toys for the Lord and cups and plates and this and that. So when you go in Sriji's, they have a special pastime. They like to ignore their customers. So I was just sitting there waiting my turn without being acknowledged that I even existed. And there was some other European devotee that was sitting in there. He had some jewels, some really good jewels that he was apparently trying to sell to Sriji. I think they were kind of interested too. And one of my godbrothers walked by. He's known to be kind of an abrupt person. He had a lot of association with Prabhupada. And he's kind of a street boy when he grew up, but he was a great devotee and a beloved of Prabhupada. And anyway, he was walking by and he poked his head in the Sriji's shop, and he saw this European trying to sell jewels to the owner. And he said, hey, let me see him. What do you got there? And so he was looking him over. He knew something about jewels. He looked them over up and down. And then he handed 3 of them back. There was one more left. And then he went like this. He pretended like he threw it in his mouth and swallowed it. And the person was noticeably frightened. He kind of jumped and he said, I was just kidding. And he handed back the last jewel. And then sort of with a flip of, he turned and walked, before he turned and walked away, he said, nothing works in Kali Yuga except the holy name anyway. And he just turned and walked away. The jewels were there for astrological reasons. You wear this jewel, you get protected, you're in your sati sati, so do this, do that. And this is something that, if you take shelter of the holy name completely, so, oh Jagannath, Damodar Vamsidhari, anything happens, oh Jagannath, be always close to taking shelter, always take your shelter of the Lord. Now, of course, we know after Trinavarta did come that Putana, actually when Putana came and Krishna killed her, Yashoda and the other gopis, elderly gopis, they did all kinds of rituals to protect Krishna. They took the dust from the hooves of the cows. They took a switch from the tail of a cow, and they anointed his body with this dust, and they said mantras, and Nrsingadev, Kavachas, all kinds of ways to protect their child. So there's another way in which the devotees, they put their anxiety into protecting Krishna. So Prabhupada writes in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam about how there's this anxiety that Devaki and Vasudeva had when Krishna was born in their jail cell. Then, of course, he took the Narayan form, full regalia with the conch, disc, lotus, club. And they were in anxiety, were Vasudeva and Devaki, because they said, oh, if Kamsa sees you like this, then he'll try to kill you because he'll see that you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Which doesn't really make sense, because if he's Narayan there manifested, then how's Kamsa going to kill Narayan? But they had this sense that, oh, he's our child, so we have to protect him. And so then they said, please make yourself into a baby. So that, I don't know how that would improve anything. But Prabhupada comments there that this is the anxiety that comes in the heart of a devotee to protect Krishna. And at the same time, the devotee has an inkling that, nobody can hurt Krishna, but still the anxiety is there. And Prabhupada then comments, he said, even we have this feeling that we don't want anybody to harm the Sankirtan movement that we've started. At the same time, implicitly he's saying, how can it be harmed? Because it's a manifestation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this sort of dual vision is always there. And in our lives, of course, if the more you can do those kinds of mitigating rituals or whatever you do with Krishna in mind, then taking shelter, understanding the spirit of Prahlad Maharaj's verse, that without Krishna's sanction, it's not going to work anyway. Then it becomes purified. And you understand that, yes, okay, we do this and that, but it's all for Krishna. Just don't get it separated and make a separate religion out of it. Because that's sometimes people do also, even with all kinds of ways to take care of their bodies, like, I only take this but not that because this is Krishna conscious. Prabhupada was very pragmatic when it came to taking care of material things. Just take care of it and move on. Don't get so caught up, and don't make a new faction out of a special way that you have to do something. Do what works and keep doing your devotional service. I hope that helps a little bit, Manjula.
Maharaj. Beautiful.
As I know it's...
Thank you so much.
Oh, great. I'm so happy. Oh, look, it's Sri Madhava Mahotsava. We get a double shot. Today, he says, regarding Sarvakamas, who take to devotional service, that is, those who have all desires, it seems that anartha nivritti should come before bhajana kriya, where one is initiated and takes vows. It seems as though one who faithfully follows the four principles would be mostly finished with anartha nivritti, if you would kindly clarify. Well, bhajana kriya means to take a stand and make a vow. And once you do that, that's when you start to realize your shortcomings. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but until you actually take a stand on something, you don't notice your shortcomings. You can say, I'm good at this or I'm good at that. And you say, okay, let's see you actually do it. And make a vow. Yes, I'm going to do this for sure. Once you do that, then you face prospects for refining yourself and improving. And so bhajana kriya comes so that we can make a vow. After all, you call it initiation. It's a beginning. It's a beginning process. And anartha nivritti may go on for a long time after that. So I think it's okay order, proper order, bhajana kriya and then anartha nivritti, because of the factor I just said. Take a vow, and then you'll get the power to overcome the anarthas. Otherwise, it may be difficult. So in bhajana kriya, you're also taking help from the Guru Parampara by aligning yourself and saying, yes, I will follow. So Bhakta Amit says, we were discussing this week in our Sangha, well, that's good, about the balance of being humble and not giving up our self-respect. Could you explain the difference between ego and self-respect? And how can one not become egoistic and yet maintain his or her self-respect? Yes. Humility actually means to understand and to act in the capacity as an instrument of Krishna. And when I accept the proper vision, when I adopt this vision, which is actually reality, that I'm not doing anything, and I give all credit to Krishna, I'm simply the instrument that he's using. That's my part only. Then this is actual humility. Prabhupada asked the question in the Bhagavad Gita, was Arjuna humble when he went out on the battlefield and killed thousands, millions of people with his bow and arrow? Was he humble? Gee, that doesn't seem very humble. You should just go sit in the corner and whimper. That's humility? No. He was humble because when he went out to fight, he had heard the Bhagavad Gita and he accepted, I'm not doing this. Krishna told me to do it, and I'm going to fight on his behalf, and I'm being empowered by him. So, for instance, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur applies the same principle to the guru, because this can become a contentious issue. You're a Vaishnava, you're supposed to be humble. Why are you acting as a guru? Why are you sitting on that seat and everybody else is sitting beneath you? Who do you think you are, buddy, sitting up on that seat? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, so what am I? An animal in the zoo garden here for everyone to look at? A big beast sitting up on this seat, dominating everybody else? What is this, he says. And then he says, Yari daka tarikaha Krishnupadesh amaragnai guruhana tara edesh. He says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, everyone become guru. It means become qualified to help lead others, teach others, lead others. Become qualified to do that. To do that, teacher sits at the head of the class, doesn't sit at the back. And therefore, he says, I will not give up this seat because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked me to sit here. Now, someone may say that's contradictory. That looks like you're not humble. Too bad. You don't know what it means. Actually, it's taking a huge risk, and it's a risk for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So humility looks quite different than what many people think it means, that I become a doormat. And whatever anybody says, I just accept it. And Prabhupada points this out in his Vrindavane Bhajan. He said, Arjuna, these people think that Vaishnavas are timid. Was Arjuna timid? No. He went into that war where there were admittedly warriors that were bigger than him, like Timangila fish. They could have swallowed him up, like Bhishma Dev. But he was humble because he accepted Krishna's instruction, said, go and fight. So he said, Krishna said, go and fight. I'm going to go and fight. I accept it. And when the village girl who learns to dance from the master then comes to the recital, and on that day, then she covers her head, stands in the corner of the stage, and the teacher comes out and said, nope, not now. Now you dance. Is that humble? And the people say, oh, she's not chaste, she's not humble. She's dancing in front of the whole town. No, she was told to dance by her teacher, so she's dancing. So this is actual humility. It's to not consider that I'm doing this, and I'm not the center either. When I do it, I'm doing it on behalf of my spiritual master. I'm doing it to please the devotees. I don't want the credit. That's humility. And if you can actually realize that, it's very powerful. Because as we've said before, even an American president once said, it's amazing how much you can get done, Harry Truman, I guess, when you don't care who gets the credit. You have to be humble to not care who gets the credit. And part of that humility, and it's not artificial, it's rooted in the understanding, first of all, Krishna knows how to apportion the credit. You don't worry about it. You let him handle that part. You don't get involved at all. who gets the credit. Let Krishna, and if Krishna tells you, you take the credit, it's humble to go and take the credit. Like Prabhupada, he put himself forward. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON. Was that humble? Why are you putting yourself forward as the CEO? Always insisting. Every book had to have it on it. Why? Could that be humility? Yes, because Prabhupada's intention behind putting himself as the founder Acharya of this organization was to hold it together. He had already seen an organization with no very distinct founder Acharya. If you have two founder Acharyas, you don't have an organization. You have two organizations. And then 4, and then 8, and then 16. So as a service, out of humility, he stood up and said, no, I'm the only founder Acharya for all time, for ISKCON. And so the humility is following Krishna's instruction, not for our own sake, but as an instrument and to fulfill his wishes. And when we do that, this is the actual definition of humility. Don't take credit. Otherwise, foolish people, prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Krishna says in Gita 3:27 that somebody who's doing something and they say, I did it, it was me. He said, they're very foolish. They don't understand anything. And the next verse, Tattvavitu mahabaho gunakarma vibhagayo gunagunesha vartanta iti matva nasajyate. Somebody who's actually in knowledge knows, I am not doing anything. I am insignificant, but I'm acting as an instrument for the Lord. Or, things are going on by his energies, not by me. So that's the foundation of all humility. And how it gets enacted externally depends on the circumstances as one's fulfilling one's duty to the Lord. Om Tat Sat. So there's so many more questions. Well, not so many. There's a few more. But we need a little time, I think, because there's a video. Is that true? Okay. So we'll save these questions and I will get back to them, hopefully. And actually, I'm going to answer them really quickly because I see they're not so difficult. Question, Srimad Bhagavatam 6.16.9 purport, Kshir Dakshai Vishnu, from him come all the incarnations within this universe. Is that only Shaktivesh avatar or even Vishnu Tattvas? Well, some Shaktivesh avatars come also through Kshir Vishnu. You can read about Narada. If yes to the latter, did Krishna's Bhoma avatar also come from Kshir Vishnu? Seems contradictory to Krishna being Sarvakarnakam. It's not contradictory because if you come through a doorway, it doesn't mean the doorway is your origin. Like if you walk into the temple room and say, oh yeah, you were born from that parking lot. That's where you came from. No, you just happen to come through that doorway. So there's an entry path. The real truth is Krishna doesn't actually make an avatar to this world because he's already here. Ekopya saura chaditum jagaranda kotim yat shaktirasti jagaranda yada chaya yarantaha andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. He's already here. He's everywhere. It's all his energy. And he simply manifests. There's only the Leela that he appears in this world, but how does he need to descend? He's already the avatari and the source of all energies. So he doesn't need to catch an Uber to go somewhere. He's already there. And can a person be in two levels, bhajana kriya and nishta at the same time? Yes, because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in his Madhurya Kadambini that there may be the appearance of these various levels of the thickening of faith, which is adau shada tata sadhusangata bhajana kriya, tato narta nivriti satato nishta ruchistata, they may appear out of order at certain times. And they make their appearance in order to encourage the devotees. They seem anachronistic, so someone may have an experience beyond their level. They may be in an arta nivritti, but then they'll have an overwhelming experience where they feel intense attachment to Krishna. And then it dissipates. The example given, prime example, is Narada Muni, who is not, he was a kuyogi, the Lord said. You're not that refined yet, when he was a little kid. And he went to meditate, and he had that experience, which was way up into bhava. And then he lost it. And then he tried to get it back mechanically, like a neophyte would do. And Krishna said, no, that's not going to happen. You just keep keep at it. Become mature. So free sample. And finally, Vijay Damodar Prabhu says, the 6:15, 12-15 purport says, one who is liberated from the conceptions of all koshas, including Anandamai. Anandamai seems to be desired end stage. However, we do understand that devotees are not attached to Ananda. It can be interpreted in this way, and examples are given in the Nectar Devotion, that devotees are performing their service, and the ecstasy, the Ananda, gets in the way, and then they check it. They don't want the Ananda because they want to serve Krishna. This is pure devotional service. And finally, at the highest level, is spiritualist expected to stay or go beyond Anandamaya Kosha? So that's the answer, that the devotee is not seeking Ananda from doing service. In fact, we heard that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the gopis become disturbed when the Ananda gets in the way of their service. So that's a higher level. They just want to serve Krishna. And it's not like, okay, I didn't get the Ananda, so I quit, or, oh, I got my Ananda now, my service can wait till later. No. They put the Ananda aside so that they can serve Krishna. But it doesn't mean they're devoid of Ananda. It's Ananda from beginning to end. But they check the symptoms, and it's not like they stop to enjoy Ananda. That's not their purpose. Om Tat Sat. We did it. I could have gone faster through all of them, too. Okay, we thank Srila Prabhupada for giving us the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and we read from all three today. So it's as if we went to Vraja Dham, Navadvip Dham, and Jagannath Puri all in one day, and touched all three dhams. And we can do that from wherever we are by the power of devotional service. And if you do that every day, make sure that you live in the transcendental sound vibration of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then you're in that realm. There's no difference whatsoever. And then you can give it to others profusely. Om Tat Sat.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.